All right, Shavosai, good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Iyar, Yona Shushie Ehrenfeld, for dedicating all of the Shirim and Joshos this month, the nishmas, Yona's grandfather Yosef ben Shmuel Aron, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsor for Iyar, Marc Karstaedt, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Joshos this month in memory of his mother, Chana Bat Shraggai. To thank our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Ben Goldberg, Yeshikoach, for dedicating the shir today in commemoration of the yahrzeit of his mother, Peggy Goldberg, Fega Rezel Bas Yaakov. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the neshamas will have an aliyah and the families in nechama. We also continue to dedicate our learning over the next number of days for those who perished in Meron and Lag BaOmer. And today we dedicate our learning the Ilui Nishmas Simcha Diskind. Simcha Diskind was 23 years old, of Beit Shemesh, was buried on past Friday in Haifa and survived by his wife and 2 young children. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, his neshama will have an aliyah and his family in nechama. And also with that, let us begin. So we are picking up today's Daf Yomi, and thank you to Reb Kalman Akiva. I saw him on Zoom before for giving shir yesterday. We will say we are picking up Emirat Hashem on today's Daf Yomi. And I know you got to the last 2 lines of Chaf Daled Amud Beis, but let's just back up a little bit, beginning 6 lines up from the bottom on Chaf Daled Amud Beis 24b, the new sugya. Bima mefaisin. Shavuot say, remember again, we'll be speaking about the piyos, the lottery. Now the Gemara asks, how are the Kohanim dressed when they do the lottery? Right? What's the attire for the lottery? Rav Nachman says they're wearing regular clothing, big day chol, unconsecrated, meaning non-big day kahuna. Rav Sheshes Amar big day kodesh. Rav Sheshes says no, they're wearing big day kahuna. So both say this is the machlokes. Are the Kohanim dressed for the avoda at the time of the lottery or not? Machlokes, Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. Rav Nachman are a big day chol. Rav Nachman said they're wearing their regular non-Kohanic clothing. The army of the big day kodesh ikobalis roos the chamsi va'avdi. Because Rav Nachman says they must be wearing unconsecrated clothing. Why? Because if they were wearing consecrated clothing, here's the concern. What's going to obviously only one coin wins the lottery. If they're all dressed, right, all dressed for the avoda, there could be someone who gets a little bit braggish that he did not win the lottery, and he may be stronger than his fellow Kohanim, and he may use force to go ahead and do the avodah. There's nothing really to stop him because he could go quickly. He's already dressed for the occasion. Therefore, again, Rav Nachman posits, let's keep the kind of big day chol. That way, again, in order to do the avodah, the next step afterwards is you have to change. So because you have to change, it kind of prevents anyone from just inserting themselves and performing the avodah. Rav Sheshes are big day kodesh. Rav Sheshes says no, they're wearing big day kodesh. Why? The amr the big day chol, because if you hold that they're wearing big day chol, Agav chavivusei mikru va'avdi. Both say very beautiful. It could very well be that if they're wearing big day chol, meaning non-Kohanic clothing, the concern would be that what? That the Kohen who won the lottery would get so excited that what would occur? He would do the avoda immediately without even thinking, right? This ties into Reb Tzadok. We just learned about shogeg, right? We just learned about accidental. Okay, it's very nice, yes, chavivos, but lamaisa, that's still an aveira, a pretty significant aveira. But he may get so excited about the avoda that he may just rush to do the avoda without being properly dressed. I'm Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman says, let's analyze a bit more. So Rav Nachman says, Minan minallah. Both say, from where do I know that halacha lemaisa the Kohen does the avoda the big day chol? So where do I know that? From Disnan we learned masrun lechazonin. So we'll say we'll learn this later on, after the lottery, they would go ahead and give over the Kohanim to the chazonin. We'll say chazonin were the attendants. Vahu mafshitin oson es bigdehen, and they would remove the clothing from the Kohen. V'lo hayu manichan alein ela michnasayim bilvad. And all the Kohen was wearing was like the pants that went underneath everything else. So the Gemara says, top of Chaf Hey, my love ba'osan shezachu lepayis. Are we not referring to the Kohen who won the lottery, or the Kohanim who won the lottery? So both say, in other words, what's going on over here? So remember both say we saw that when you entered in through Shar Nikanor, right? When you entered into the Beis Hamikdash on the eastern side, right? There was only one gate on the eastern side, Shar Nikanor. So there was 11 amas span over there that was called Ezras Yisrael, And remember again in Shar Nikanor, there were two chambers to the right and to the left. The chamber to the right was called the chamber of Pinchas Hamalbish, right? Pinchas, the clothier. So remember again, the Kohanim were dressed by attendants. So now the Brayso over here, the Mishnah over here, describes that the Kohen was given over to the attendants. The attendants essentially stripped him down, leaving on the Michnasayim, his pants, and then they would dress him. So I will say, doesn't this sound like, so Rav Nachman says, what does this sound like? This sounds like over here that the Kohen was wearing big day chol during the lottery, and then after he won the lottery, he would go to the attendant, and the attendant would dress him. So the Gemara says, Am Rav Huna, no. Bar Yehuda, Am Rav Sheshes, lo. Boson shelo zachu lepayis. No, so they actually say, no, what this Mishnah is referring to, are to the people who did not win the lottery. What the Mishnah may actually highlight is, everyone came to the lottery dressed for action, right? Everyone came to the lottery dressed for the avoda. In fact, again, those who did not win the lottery, were then undressed by the attendants. So the Gemara Shachanai Mistar, this seems to make more sense. Because we'll say, if you think that it refers to those who won the lottery, what does it mean when it says, Lo hayu manichen alein ela michnasayim bilbad? See, we'll say, if you look at the lashon of the Mishnah, so what it sounds like over here is, they undressed him, and the only thing they left on him were his pants. Michnasayim. So the Gemara says, that doesn't make sense if you hold there wearing big day kahuna. Why not? Vatanya, we learned, Minayin shlo yehi davar kodem lemichnasayim. But say, from where do we know? And this is incredible. When the Kohanim got dressed, there was an order to the begadim. There was an order to the begadim. We'll say very much, reminiscent of or not reminiscent, but this is one of the reasons why we have an order as to how we get dressed as well, right? The Gemara Maseches Brachos, that there's a right shoe before a left shoe, a tying of a left shoe before a right shoe. The Gemara Maseches Brachos even brings down about putting on your shirt, putting on your pants. There's different orders for things. So I just want to point out something very interesting, which is, where does this all come from? This comes from the Beis HaMikdash, right? I don't know if it comes from other places, it comes from the Gemara. The Gemara brings other sources as well, but this notion of having an order when you get dressed comes from the Beis HaMikdash. But we've spoken of this many times before. What's the svara? Why does it matter? Right? You think about this in the morning, right? Especially when we wake up early in the morning. You're just happy if you remember to get dressed, right? If I put on all of my articles of clothing at 5:15 or whatever it is in the morning, that's an incredible accomplishment. But why does there have to be an order? Because we're supposed to remember again, the Rebbe Shalom was teaching us such a profound lesson. Seder. Seder is the key to success in life. You have to have an order, right? You have to have time management. You have to have life management. You have to decide what you want to do, how you're going to do it, the order in which you're going to execute. Because those who lack Seder in life end up wasting an incredible amount of time spinning their wheels and accomplishing very little. And again, that from the beginning moment of the morning in the Beis HaMikdash, when you got dressed, there was an order to how you get dressed. And I will say, by the way, the Beis HaMikdash, you notice, by the way, is all about Seder. It's all about Seder. And I will say, what happens if you break the Seder in the Beis HaMikdash? It's bad news. Bad news, right? Nadav and Avi were the first ones to break the Seder in the Mikdash, and it doesn't work out well. So the Gemara says, listen to this. The Gemara says, how do you know that the Michnasayim, the pants, are the first thing that the Kohen has to put on? So the Gemara says, Talmud Lomar, u'michnesei bad, yu'al bisaro. Pasuk says, and literally the linen pants shall be on his flesh. Now that teaches us, number one, first of all, that there can't be anything. Actually, we'll see that there can't be anything. The Michnasayim essentially also served as like the undergarments of the Kohen. There was nothing else that he could wear underneath the Michnasayim. But the Gemara is using it here to teach me is al bisaro means it's the first article of clothing you put on. It's the first thing you put on are the Michnasayim. So the Gemara says, so therefore again, it can't be over here that halacha lamaisa, that this must be described. It can't be that they were wearing big day kahuna, or I should say the Gemara says, it can't be, right? So if the Michnasayim have to be the first thing that they were putting on, then it doesn't make sense when the Brisa says, Vayimafshitin oso es big dayin, v'loho yumanichin alein ela Michnasayim. To which the Gemara says, V'idak, the other opinion will say, Lo kasha, hachi katani, ad sha'odin aleihen, Big Day Chol, Ma'bishin Osan Michnesei Kodesh. Now the other opinion will say what it means to say is like this. Essentially, Abosai, if you go with the approach that the Kohen was wearing Big Day Chol, so then halacha l'maisa, what they would do is, they would undress him, right? They would undress him, and they would go ahead, Sha'odonai Big Day Chol, Ma'bishin Osan Michnesei Kodesh, Ma'avshitin Osan Big Day Chol. First, they would put on the Michnasayim, the Big Day Kahuna, and only then would they remove the rest of his Big Day Chol. The Gemara says, V'lo hiyu manichin ela Michnasayim bilvad. And ultimately, again, then by the time they removed his Big Day Chol, all he would have left on would be the Michnasayim of the Big Day Kahuna. Okay, we'll say, so the point over here is we tried to bring this Mishnah, Rav Nachman tried to bring this Mishnah as a proof that the Kohanim showed up for the pious, for the lottery, wearing Big Day Chol, and all the Gemara has just proven is that halacha l'maisa, the Brisa could be read to support Rav Shesh's opinion as well. Good. So we'll say, I'm Rav Shesh. So Rav Shesh says, Minan minallah. Rav Shesh, from where do I know my opinion? That halacha l'maisa, the Kohanim showed up to the pious, wearing Big Day Kahuna. So the Sanya, because we learned about it, is very interesting. Lishkas hagazis kimin basilki gidola haisa. The Lishkas hagazis was like what's basilki means a basila, was a large dome-like structure. That was the Lishkas. So remember again, if you have your Beis Hamikdash map, you don't even have to pray. I'll take it out for you. But if you have your Beis Hamikdash map, so I'll say, so just to understand what we're looking at, the Lishkas Hagazis is square yotes. This is the Lishkas Hagazis over here. So remember again, just to orient, you're coming in the eastern side of the Beis Hamikdash. This is the Shar Nikanor over here, Shar Nikanor. This rectangle over here is Ezras Yisrael. And up here you have the Lishkas Hagazis. So both remember again, as we established, that's also where Lishkas Parhedrin is, right? In that same box, that's the chamber where the Kohen Gadol would be sequestered over the course of his 7 days. So we'll say now, you're going to see it makes a lot of sense, because what happened in Lishkas Hagazis, that's where the Sanhedrin would sit. That's where the Sanhedrin would sit. And of course, we already learned that over the course of his 7-day sequestering, he was educated by members of the Sanhedrin. So it makes sense that everything is happening right over here. So we'll say, this is the Lishkas Hagazis. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Lishkas Hagazis come in basilki isos. Lishkas Hagazis was like a large basila, a large dome-like structure. So the Gemara says, Pais b'mizracha, listen to this. So they used to draw the lottery. The lotteries were drawn in the eastern part of that chamber. V'zakin yoshev ma'arava. And again, the elder, we'll discuss all of this, the elders sat in the west. V'kohanim mukafin va'omdim kamin buchliar. And the Kohanim would stand in a circle during the lottery. V'hamamona ba. The Kohen who was in charge of counting off the Kohen for the lottery would come. V'notel mitznefes mirosho shel echad mehen. And he would take the mitznefes. He would take the hat. We'll say this is just talking about the process of the lottery. So everybody's assembled. So just here's what we know. Everyone's assembled in the Lishkas Hagazis, right? And the Zakin, the elder, is sitting in the west. And the Kohanim are going ahead and standing in a circle in the east. And what happens? The Mamuna, the Kohen who was in charge of counting off the Kohanim, he goes ahead and takes off the hat of one of the Kohanim. The Yodin Shemimenum Pais Maschil. And I will say again, the Kohen who was unhatted, right, who had his hat removed, he was the individual from whom they began the count. The Gemara will say, so now why is this important for us? Big Day Chol. Now if you think that the Kohanim were wearing Big Day Chol for the pious, mitznefes bebig day chol mi'ika. Both say mitznefes, the hat, is one of the Big Day Kuna. So the fact that the Mishnah explicitly says that halach, or the Brisa says, that halacha l'maisa, they would begin the count from the Kohen who was wearing they would remove the mitznefes from the Kohen from whom they began the count, tells us what? That the Kohanim were dressed for the pious. They clearly were dressed for the lottery. To which the Gemara was saying, therefore, this Brisa supports Rav Sheshes. To which the Gemara says, not necessarily. The Gemara says, and if you would think, like Rav Nachman, that the Kohen were wearing Big Day Chol to the pious, is there a mitznefes by Big Day Chol? To which the Gemara says, yes, actually there might be. Where? Both is incredible. Kohen sha'asta lo imo kisones Ovid ba avodas yachid. Rabbi said it's actually quite beautiful, and we'll discuss this in greater depth later on. We spoke about this actually in Shkalim, Rabbi say, if you remember, that big day kahuna must be made from communal funds. But remember again, we discussed the case. What happens if a Kohen wants to get his own tailor-made big day kahuna, or as we're going to see, it was often the custom of the mothers of the Kohanim to make their sons big day kahuna. So remember again, does that work? Is that appropriate? To which the Gemara says it can, provided that what? They donate it to the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, that big day kahuna has to belong to the community. It can't belong to the individual. So if the Kohen's mother wants to make him a beautiful set of big day kahuna, that's fine, but she has to donate it to the Beis HaMikdash. There was one more caveat. That could count. The Kohen could use that for a big day, for avoda, but only for avodas yachid, not for avodas tzibor. It's really quite interesting, I will say. So therefore, again, he could use it for private service, but he could not use those begadim for communal service. Therefore, I will say, listen to this. So therefore, you could have a case of a Kohen showing up for avoda, wearing big day kahuna. But I will say, remember again, when they're doing this first lottery, the lottery is for the Trumas Hadeshin, which is an avoda, which is communal avoda. So the Kohen could be dressed, so to speak, for avoda, but not dressed to do communal avoda. So remember again, so we were saying the fact that they removed the mitznefes from the Kohen from whom they're going to begin the count, shows us that the Kohanim come dressed for avoda. To which the Gemara says, not necessarily. It shows us that the Kohanim could come dressed in big day kahuna, but lav dafka, that they are dressed for communal avoda. Quite interesting. So Amar Abaye says, so therefore the Gemara now transitions to another discussion regarding the Lishkas Hagazis. So we'll say, so what do we do with this machlokes? So we'll say, so remember again, we are left now with a machlokes between Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshas. How do the Kohanim come dressed to the lottery? Rabbi said this is a major shaila. So Rav Nachman telling us big day chol, Rav Sheshas telling us big day chodesh. How do we paskin? So Rabbi said the Rambam in Hilchos Tmidin Umusafin, Perek Dalid. Halacha Aleph writes as follows. We'll say, here's the halacha. Kol ha'avodas ha'elu she'osin b'chol yom b'payis ha'yu osin osa. So first of all, again, we've already seen this. All of the avodos of the day were divided up by lottery. The case of ha'yu osin, how would they go ahead and perform the lottery? Kol kohani bate avos shoyom. All of the kohanim who belong to the bate avos, so the families who are doing the avodah that day, nichnasen lelishkas hagazis, would come into lishkas hagazis, as we'll discuss. Acher shi'alam udashachar, after dawn, Umilu bashin hein bebig day kahuna. Let's say here it is explicit. Halacha Perek Dalid, Halacha Aleph, Hilchos Tmidin Umusafin. The Rabban Paskins like Rav Sheshas that the Kohanim would show up clothed, wearing big day kahuna, and that's how they would come ultimately again to the lottery. Obviously, those who did not win the lottery would then go and be, disrobed, right, unclothed from the big day kahuna. But Allah Chalamayse, everyone shows up ready to do the avodah. Incredible. So we'll say, now let's talk a little bit about the Lishkas Hagaz. It's very exciting. So we'll say, so remember again, talking about square yud tes over here, we're gonna give it a little bit more definition. Lishkas Hagaz is seat of the Sanhedrin. So says the Gemara. Amar Abaye Shmamina. Learn from this previously stated brayso. So Lishkas Hagaz is Chatzia B'Kodesh Chatzia B'Chol. And I will say, interestingly enough, the way the Lishkas Hagaz was situated, half of it was in the consecrated area of the Beis HaMikdash, and half of it was in an unconsecrated area of the Beis HaMikdash. Why? How do we know this? Well, we'll see why in just a moment. Ushmamina, furthermore, again, you also see, Shnei Psachim Hayula. There must have been two entrances into the Lishkas Hagazis, right? Echad Pesach B'Kodesh, the Echad Pesach B'Chol. And one entrance was in the Kodesh, or in other words, one entrance was to a sanctified part of the Beis HaMikdash, and one entrance was to an unsanctified part of Harabayis, or to the Beis HaMikdash as well. How do we know this, Rabbosai? So there are two statements made vis-a-vis the Lishkas Hagazis. Number one, that the chamber was kind of divided in two. Part of it, not literally, but Kedusha-wise, Part of it was situated in the Kodesh, and part of it was situated in Chol. That's statement number one. Statement number two, that there were two different entrances. The Pashtos, one entrance in the Kodesh area, or to the Kodesh area, and one entrance to the Chol area. The Gemara says, why do I say this? Here we go. Because we'll say, if you think that the entire Lishkas HaGazas was situated in the Kodesh, Zakin Yoshev Ma'arava. What did the Brisa say about that? That the elder of the Sanhedrin is sitting in the west, right? In the west of the chamber. V'hamer mar, but we learned, Rabbi say, Ein yeshiva ba'azara el l'malchei beis David bilvad. Rabbi say, no one is allowed to sit in the Beis HaMikdash except for Davidic kings. There is no yeshiva b'mikdash. This is part of the halacha, or part of the concept of Mora b'mikdash. You have to come with a certain sense of reverence and respect to the Beis HaMikdash. I don't wear my shoes, I don't bring my staff, I don't bring my money bag, and we don't sit in the Beis HaMikdash, except for Davidic kings. So the fact that the Brisa says that someone is sitting in the Lishkas HaGazes, this Zakim, this elder, indicates to me that clearly part of the Lishkas HaGazes is situated in the Chol, in an unconsecrated area. Furthermore, and if you would think that, maybe you'll say, maybe the entire Lishkas HaGazes is situated in the Chol. Maybe the entire chamber is situated in an unconsecrated part. That can't be. I'll tell you why. Because after all, the Gemara says, Payis b'mizracha. We just said the lottery takes place in the eastern part of the chamber. V'ha ba'inon, bebeis elokim nalich beragesh. So we'll say, but we have the pasuk in Sefer Tehillim. And David HaMelech says, Asher yachtav nam tiksol bebeis elokim nahalich beragesh. So we'll say, listen to this. The pasuk says, in the house of Hashem, we will go with excitement. Now we'll see exactly, by the way, what that pasuk has to go ahead. Actually, no, I'm sorry. We just saw that at the end of Chavdal and Beis. Remember again, the Gemara asked, why do we do so many lotteries? Why do we do so many lotteries? Right? Why don't we just do one lottery for everything? What did the Gemara answer? The Gemara quoted this pasuk. The Beis Elokim Nahalich Baragesh. We want to create an excitement, a rash, an excitement. So the lotteries create an excitement. And I will say, so where is the excitement of the lotteries created? Where does it have to take place? The Beis Elokim. The Beis Elokim is a consecrated part of the Beis HaMikdash. So once I know, so it's very interesting. So here's what I know. I know that the lotteries are taking place inside of Lishkas HaGazes, as the Brisa told me. I know that the lotteries must take place in the Kodesh, in a part of the Mikdash that is called Beis Elokim, a consecrated area. But I also know that the elder is sitting on the western side of the Lishkas HaGazes, which tells me what? That must be in an unconsecrated area, because at the end of the day, no one's allowed to sit in the Kodesh except from Malchei Beis David. So how do I reconcile this? The Gemara says, Shema mina, chatzi b'kodesh v'chatzi b'chol. So I'll say, what do I see from here? I see from here that halacha l'maisa, half of the lishka is in the Kodesh, and half of it is in the Chol. Half of it, I will say, is consecrated, half of it is unconsecrated. So clearly, again, what you begin to see from here is that halacha l'maisa, the area where the payis took place, right? The area which the Gemara says over here, the Gemara says that the payis took place on the east, towards the eastern side. So towards the eastern side, ultimately again was going to be the Kodesh area, and the western side, ultimately again the area where the Zakin was sitting, was the unconsecrated area. So you see from here that the chamber itself was divided between Kodesh L'chol. So the Gemara also, what was the second thing the Brisa said? That there were two entrances. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why this has to be as well. This is incredible. If you think that there was only one entrance, and the entrance opened up to the consecrated area of the Beis HaMikdash, to the Kodesh, Zachin Yoshev Ma'arava, then how could someone be sitting in the chamber? After all, V'hatnan halishkos benuyos b'chol upsuchos lekodesh tochan kodesh. It's actually a very interesting halacha. Very interesting halacha. We'll say, if you have a chamber in the Beis HaMikdash, listen to this idea. If you have a chamber in the Beis HaMikdash, even if the chamber itself is situated in an unconsecrated area, but it opens exclusively into a consecrated area, the chamber itself is treated as a consecrated area. In other words, the identity of a chamber is fundamentally forged by the area in which it opens to, which makes sense. Because we'll say, ultimately, again, where you open to is going to be your point of access. So even if geographically the chamber is situated in the Chol, but it only has one entrance that opens into the Kodesh, the interior of the chamber itself is considered Kodesh. Right? The Gemara says, and if you want to say ultimately again that there was only one entrance to the chamber, and the entrance went to the chol, to the unconsecrated area, then payis b'mizracha, then how would you go ahead and be allowed to do the lottery in the eastern part of the chamber, when, as we just said before, the lottery has to be done where? The lottery has to be done in the Kodesh, to which the Gemara says, Vatanan, we learned, Benuyos bekodesh upsuchos lechol tochan chol. We'll say this is incredible. Say it's the opposite idea. If you have a chamber that is mamish built in the Kodesh, but it has one entrance, and that one entrance is to the chol, then the status of the chamber is dictated by the positioning of the entrance. Right? So therefore, again, even though the chamber itself is situated in the Kodesh, if the only entranceway is to the Chol, the chamber is treated like Chol. If that's the case, then Allah Chalamaisi, you would not be permitted to go ahead and do the payis there. Therefore, we're kind of working backwards a little bit. The fact that in one chamber, you have someone sitting, and you also have the payis, you also have the lottery, right, which has to be done in the Kodesh, and that's all happening in one chamber, tells me two things. Number one, that part of the chamber is Kodesh, part of it is Chol. And number two, there must be two entrances. One entrance to the Kodesh and one entrance to the Chol. Shema mina, shnei psachim hayula, echad pasuach laKodesh, ve'echad pasuach laChol. Therefore, we'll say there must be two entrances, right? Two entrances, one entrance to the Kodesh, one entrance to the Chol. And I will say that the two entrances allow the chamber to have which identity? Both identities. And I will say you can see this, by the way, now on Picture Your Test. You can see there are two entrances over here in the Lishkas HaGazis. One on top that goes out. That's the entrance ultimately again to Chol. And one entrance that goes directly into what we call Ezras Yisrael. That rectangular strip over here that's 11 amos wide. That rectangular strip where Yisraelim were allowed to come as well. But Sas Kedushas Mikdash, that other entrance over there. So we'll say that is our Lishkas HaGazis. So now what we emerge with is as follows. Lishkas HaGazis, seat of the Sanhedrin, a basila-like chamber. A lot of activity happening over here. The Sanhedrin meets over here. The payis, the lotteries are conducted over here. And I will say what we begin to see is the chamber itself was split. Part of it was Kodesh, part of it was Chol. Two entrances, one to Kodesh, one to Chol, which ultimately again allows this chamber to have this dual identity. We also learn halacha l'maisa that the Kohanim came to the payis, they came to the lottery fully clothed in their bigdei. I will just point out, I think an incredible hashkafa piece that comes out from this, which is also the notion. It's fascinating to think that the identity of a chamber is determined by its entrance exit, its doorway. So in other words, you could have a chamber that is situated in the Kodesh, but if the entranceway, if the doorway goes only out to the Chol, the chamber is Chol. You could have a chamber that is Chol, but if the doorway ultimately goes out to the Kodesh, it's Kodesh, which also tells you that one of the most important determinants in life about who and what you are is where you're going. Where is your doorway? Where is your doorway? Where am I headed in life? And I will say that kivun, that direction about where I'm headed in life, that makes me who I am. So unfortunately, if my doorway is to Chol, if my aspirations in life are not really consecrated, and my aspirations in life are not really spiritual and lofty, and pretty much my direction is just in the direction of Chol, you could be situated and surrounded by all the Kedusha in the world. But if you don't have the right life aspirations of Kedusha, if your doorway is not towards greater and enhanced Kedusha, then unfortunately it's Chol. But conversely, a person could have a chamber, a person could have a life that is so Chol, right? That is so mundane, that is so unholy. But if I have she'ifos, if I have yearning, if I have desires, if I have wants for something bigger, greater, and holier, if my doorway in life leads to Kodesh, then at the end of the day, that in and of itself makes me Kodesh. You see, what the Ribbon Shalom wants to see more than anything is, what do I want out of life? Because a lot of times the life that I have is not reflective of the life that I want. And the things that I'm doing are not necessarily reflective of the things I want to be. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to see in life is, where do I choose to put my doorway? Does my doorway lead to chol with no real great life aspirations or desires? Or does my doorway lead to Kodesh? In which case, if my doorway leads to Kodesh, if my path leads to Kodesh, if I have she'ifos, if I have yearnings for something greater in life, then that makes my entire life chamber Kodesh as well. An incredible yisod. Says the Mishnah. Let's go back. They're very exciting. You have to admit, these Mishnayos are like, they're riveting and overwhelming because it is so exciting. You know, like sometimes, you go ahead and you're signing up for a program or something and you want to see a conference, you want to see sample schedule, right? Here was last year's. So I'll say, this is incredible to get to, and this is not even a sample schedule. This is the actual, we're living in the Beis HaMikdash. We're going through the day of the Beis HaMikdash. And what's great about this also is we're actually up as early as they were in the Beis HaMikdash as well. So mamish, like, we're sitting here sipping coffee, learning Gemara. So it's incredible. Mamish, you could explore, because again, I don't know, now already it gets light earlier. But also you said, we start our day at the same time, which is an incredible schus as well. So the Mishnah says, we'll say second lottery. What happened with the second lottery? Well, I just want to give also, we started the night call here at night, and I just want to give a special yashar koach to Milt Gertner. Milt was here last night at his chavrusa, and I'm a couple of tables away. Yes, eavesdropping, I'm not going to lie. And I hear mamish, they're going ahead in the daf, which was, let's say, such a sweet and melodic noise. So again, just a little plug. If you're looking to chazer the daf, or you're looking for a chavrusa, or you're just looking to come and learn something else, it's beautiful. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, 8:30 to 10, here in the basement. Just a great chavra, great group of guys, and Milt Gertner. I'll say, sorry. I will say so again. So the Mishnah, no, because when I heard Milt going ahead, I'm like, oh, I got to bring my A game. If the Chevra is going ahead now, mamish, this is serious stuff. So the Mishnah says as follows: Hapayis Hasheni. So we'll say the second lottery. The second lottery, we'll say, was for what? Was for the carbon tamid. Mi shochet, mi zorek, mi medashin, mizbeach hapanimi. So we'll say the second lottery was to determine who should check the carbon tamid, who should do the zrika, who should do the Trumas Hadeshin from the inner Mizbeach. So also remember again, the Trumas Hadeshin that we discussed in the first lottery was the Trumas Hadeshin of the outer Mizbeach, the Mizbeach HaNechoshes, the copper altar. Right? In this second lottery now, we're talking about who does the Trumas Hadeshin from the inner Mizbeach, right? Which was the golden altar of Ketores. Umi medashin es ha-menorah, who will clean out the ash from the menorah. Umi ma'ale evarim lekevesh, and who is going to go ahead and bring up the limbs to the base, up the ramp to the Mizbeach. Now also we're going to see that the way it worked with the avoda was the limbs weren't just immediately brought up to the top of the Mizbeach, but we're going to see rather they were placed at different parts of the ramp. So I just want to be clear, we're drawing the lots over here. This is not one person for all of these things. We'll see exactly how this was divvied up. What the Mishnah is just saying is that halacha l'maisa, we drew the lots for all of these avodos. Right? So number 2 is who's going to shecht the carbon tamid, who's going to do zrika, who's going to clean out the inner mizbeach, who's going to clean out the menorah, who's going to bring up the sacrificial limbs to the ramp, and what were those sacrificial limbs? Harosh v'haregel. So we'll say the rosh is the head, regel is the right hind leg, shtei yadayim are the 2 forelegs, ha'ukatz v'haregel, ukatz we'll say is the tail, and regel is the left hind leg, ha'chazeh, the chest, gera, the neck, ushtea the fanos, and the two flanks, the 2 sides of the animal. Hakirayim, the intestines. Soles, Nabo says, the fine flour that would accompany the carbon tamid. Chavit in the minchas, chavit in Nabo say, which was, remember again, the special meal offering of the Kohen Gadol. Vahayayin, the wine libations. Shlosha asar kohanim zachuba. And Nabo say, there are 13, you'll go through this, there are 13 kohanim who won in this next lottery. I will say, so 13 kohanim were selected to perform these avodos. Good. So the Gemara says, and just ends off with an interesting statement. Amar ben Azef ne Rabbi Akiva Mishram Yoshua derech hiluch hayakar. I will say, now what I want to point out is something very interesting. So the Mishnah just went through the different parts of the animal. That order that the Mishnah gave was according to the Tanakama, the order that the limbs were brought up, or the order that the parts of the animal were brought up. Comes along Ben Azai, who says the name of Rabbi Akiva, Mishum Rabbi Shabbos. Remember again, Ben Azai was the Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. So Ben Azai says before Rabbi Akiva, Mishum Rabbi Yeshua, Derech Hiluch Hayakar. If he disagrees with the order of the bringing up of the sacrificial parts, Instead, he says that the order of the parts of the animal as they were brought up was really the way the animal would walk, right? What we call derech hilucho, right? Only the way the animal would walk, ultimately, again, was the way that the pieces were offered up. We'll see what that means in the Gemara. Ibaylo, suppose that the Gemara says as follows. Kishen mefaisim. Suppose that here's what we know. There were 13 Kohanim who went ahead and did these various avodos. So here's the shayla, Rabbi Osai. Kishen mefaisin avoda achas mefaisin, o dimul l'chal avoda va'avoda mefaisin. Suppose that here's the shayla. When they drew this lottery, how did it work? Did we select one winner, one coin won, and then the 12 Kohanim to the right of him were assigned the various avodos? Or did we do 13 lotteries for each of these avodos? Take a look at the first Rashi in the Gemara. Lavoda achas mefaisin kigon mishochet. In other words, maybe the only thing we did is we drew a lottery for who would get the shecht, the tamid. That was the lottery. And then what would happen? So the Gemara says, Shiyiske, and whoever would win that lottery, Misha Zachal Shchita, Shuv Ein Payis L'Shar Yud Beis Avodos, Ella, Kohanim Shemukavim Liyamino Nimshachin Acharav, Kafi Seder Mishnasenu, Sheni Lizrika, Shlishi L'Dishul Mizbeach, P'nei Revi, Odil, the next Rashi, Hayu Chozim Lotzin Abosir. So here with the Shaila is good Shaila. When we speak about this lottery, how did it work? Do we say, essentially there was one lottery, so what was the lottery for? Who gets the shech the tamid? And let's say again, Aaron HaKohen wins that lottery. Great. The 12 Kohanim to the right of Aaron are now assigned those subsequent avodos. Or do we go ahead and we do the first lottery for the tamid and then 12 more lotteries for the subsequent avodos? Good kasha. To which the Gemara says, Tashma, Arba Payasas Hayasham. Well, so we learned in the Brayso that there were only 4 lotteries. The fact that there are only 4 lotteries indicates to us that it must be they were only really doing a lottery for the carbon tamid, and after the guy won the tamid, the other remaining 12 were assigned to the kohanim to his right, but there were no additional payasos, there were no additional lotteries for the other avodos. To which the Gemara says, no. Amrav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Kachi Kar. That's what it means to say. Arba pamim nichnasin lahafis ulechol chada v'chada hayetuva payos. Rabbi says, "Pasal that what it means to say is as follows: the kohanim gathered 4 times to draw lots. They gathered 4 times, but it's possible that that within each gathering there were multiple lotteries. So I will say, so it's possible that so throughout the day they gathered 4 times, but during those gatherings it's possible that they went ahead and actually drew multiple lots." Tashma, so I'll say Amud Beis, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo haya payis lemachta. There was no payis ultimately, again, we'll say for the machta. Now, over here, let me read the rest. El koin shezacha b'ktores, Omer lazeh she'imo, zechei imi b'machta. So we'll say, listen to this. We're going to draw the lot, we're going to speak about the lots which were drawn to perform the avoda of the ketores, of the incense. So we'll say, what would happen? The kohen who would win the lottery for the ketores, ultimately, again, he would say to the guy next to him, do me a favor, you bring in the coals. Because remember again, the avodah of ketores required 2 things. It required bringing in a ladle full of ketores, of incense, but you also had to bring a shovel full of coals from the outer mizbeach. So it was a 2-man job. So what the Mishnah says, the Raisa says over here, is that the kohen who would win the lottery for the ketores would say to the guy next to him, what? Go ahead and you bring in the shovel full of coals. Let's do this together. I'll bring in the ketores, you bring in the shovel full of coals. So I will say, what do you see from here? You see from here that apparently what would happen is they would draw the lottery for like the major avoda, and then everything after that would kind of be divvied up by the people who were adjacent to the kohen who won the lottery. To which the Gemara says, Shani machto ketores dechad avodahi. It's different, Nabosai. It's different because, remember again, the bringing of the coals and the bringing of the ketores was one avoda. It's just that logistically, you needed 2 people. So you can't do 2 lotteries, one to bring in the ladle of ketores and one to bring in the shovel of coals, because again, they're the same avoda. It's just logistically, you needed 2 people. So what would happen? The kohen would win, would say to the kohen who was next to him, will you do this avoda with me? But under normal circumstances, like going back to our Mishnah, where each of these avodos are separate things, perhaps they really did go ahead and bring 2, or perhaps they really did perform multiple lotteries. To which the Gemara says, others say, Dafka machto ketores the chadavodi. I will say an alternate version of this says it was only by the machta and the ketores, the coals and the ketores, that it's one avoda that they didn't draw separate lotteries. Aval shar avodos boy pious. But ultimately, again, all other avodos required their own lotteries. To which the Gemara says, Machta itzricha. I have to bring down the case of the Machta. Why? Because I would have thought, Hov lo shricha u'ma'asra niskin la pious bifnei asma. See, Rabbi say, I might have thought that dafka by the Ketores, you would dafka draw multiple lotteries, right? One to bring in the ladle full of Ketores, one for the shovel. Why? Because first of all, the Ketores occurs infrequently, right? And number two, Ketores, I will say, was a big schos. Why? Because Ketores was a skula to become wealthy. Which I will say, even to this day, it is very important to recite Parshas HaKetores for one's parnasa. Some even have the custom to recite it from a klaf. Ultimately, again, as a school for parnasa. So the Gemara says over here, so I might have thought that because Ketores was such an incredibly important avoda, and there was a school to become wealthy, niskin lapayis bifnei atzma, you should draw one lottery for the Ketores and one lottery for the shovel full of coals. Kamash Malon, that's not the case. Kamash Malon say that we only go ahead and treat it as one avoda. So Tashma, Tatana Bichia, Lo l'chol avoda v'avoda mefaisin. We don't go ahead and do a separate lottery for every single avoda. So how do we deal with the avodos? So the Gemara says, Ella, Kohen shezacha b'tamid. Rather, Rabbi say what happens is the Kohen who won the lottery to shech the carbon tamid. Shnei masar echav hakohanim mishachin imo shemaim. Rabbi say, so therefore again the Gemara says over here, what happens with the avoda of the Kohanim? Rather, again, I will say one person goes ahead and wins the avoda. One person wins the lottery, and the 12 Kohanim to his right get the rest of the avoda. So Rabbi said the conclusion of the Gemara seems to be that halacha l'maisa, we're really only doing one lottery. And what's the lottery for? Who is going to get to shecht the carbon tamid? And Rabbi say, who is assigned the rest of these avodos? So we don't do 12 more lotteries now. Rather, again, what we do is the 12 kohanim to the right of the Kohen who won the lottery to shecht the tamid, those 12 kohanim are assigned the remaining avodos of the morning. Incredible. I will say that is indeed how the Rambam paskins. This is in Perek Dalet, same Perek as we mentioned before, but this is Perek Dalet halacha vav. So before we quoted Perek Dalet halacha aleph, that tells the kohanim come into the pais. So we'll say Perek Dalet is an interesting Perek to look at because the Rambam goes through the whole seder of the morning. So in halacha aleph, the Rambam taught us that the kohanim come dressed to the lottery, and in halacha vav, the Rambam tells us this. That halacha l'maisa goes. He says Zesh yatsa pais rishon hu shochet tamid shel shachar v'asheni she'omid b'tzido hu mekabel asadog shlishi. So the Rambam says halacha l'maisa. That's how it works. So there's only one lottery. The only one lottery is for the Kohen who goes ahead and shechs the carbon tamid. After he wins, the 12 kohanim to his right are assigned the rest of the avodos as outlined in the Mishnah. Beautiful. So we'll say, listen to this. The Gemara is Payasheni, Iboiluhu, Mi Mekabel. So we'll say, the Gemara has an interesting question, because if you notice in the Mishnah is missing something. And we'll say, right, how does the Mishnah read? The Mishnah says we're going to go ahead and draw a lot, Mi Shochet. Who's going to go and do the shchita? And then it says, Mi Zorek, who does the sprinkling. Both say there's something missing. What's missing? Kabbalah. Kabbalah Rabos. Remember again, after you shech the carbon, you have to go ahead and receive the dam. Who's doing the Kabbalah? Mi Mekabel. To which the Gemara says, Shochet Mekabel. So Rabos say, on one hand, maybe we say it's the Shochet. The person who's doing the shchit, he does the Kabbalah. The Amrit Zorik Mekabel. Because if you want to say that it's the person who does the Zrika that does the Kabbalah, Agav Chavivusei lo Mekabel Kulei Dam. Well, so, the Kohen is about to do the Zrika. He's so excited for the Zrika that what? Maybe he's not going to leave the Kli underneath the animal as it's bleeding long enough, because he's eager to do the Zrika. So because he could do the Zrika, he might not do the Kabbalah correctly. The Gemara says, O Dilma, Zorik Mekabel. So therefore, I'll say, that would be an argument to say, the Shochet should do the Kabbalah, right? He should shech and hold the Kli underneath the animal as it's bleeding, catch the blood, because if you give it to the Zorik to do it, the Zorik's eager to do the Zrika, and he's not going to be careful enough with the avoda of Kabbalah. O Dilma. The other hand, you could say Zorik Mekabel. No, maybe the person who's going to do the Zrika, we also give him to do the Kabbalah. Why? The Amit Shochet Mekabel, because I will say here's the problem with allowing the Shochet to do the Kabbalah. See, I will say Kabbalah is an avoda, and the Shchita is Kshera Bizarre. Right? Remember again, technically, as much as they're drawing lotteries, they're drawing lots for who does the shchita. Interestingly enough, shchita can be done by a non-Kohen. Zimnin de shachet zar. Ultimately, again, sometimes zar, not going to do shchita. So everyone will say, you can't assign Kabbalah to the shochet, because then you can get yourself into a situation where a Yisrael is doing Kabbalah, and that's unequivocally Yasser. So therefore, it must be that the Zorik is doing Kabbalah. Tashma, so what's that? Let's analyze. Ben Katan Asa Yud Beis Dad Likir, Kadesh Shiu Yud Beis Echav HaKohanim Asukin B'Tamid, Mekadshin Yedeim Raglim Basacha. So we'll say, this is very interesting. In the beginning, right, remember again, the Kohanim have an obligation of Kiddush Dayim Raglayim, sanctification of hands and feet before they do the avoda. There used to be a kior, right? So there was a kior, which a sink, a wash basin, and there was one faucet, which would obviously cause a backup. So Ben Katan, we'll see, made a new kior that had 12 faucets, right? 12 faucets is the wrong word. 12 spouts. Thank you. 12 spouts, right? 12 spouts. Taps was excellent also, right? It was good, right? We'll go with spouts. So, I'm sorry. Spigots. Okay, good. 12 Zachen, right? Not allowed. So let's say, why 12? Why 12? Because we'll say there are 12 Kohanim who participate in the avoda of the Tamid. So the Gemara therefore says, so look, watch this. So that way everyone who's involved in the Tamid could go ahead and wash their hands and feet at once. V'isa adaitcha shochet mekabel. And if you say ultimately again that it's the shochet. Now I will say, now because shchita's kshera bizarre, technically speaking, you don't need Kiddush Hayim v'Raglayim before Shechita. It's very interesting. So therefore, Abba said the 12 includes everyone other than the Shochet. Now, if you hold that it's the Shochet who's doing the Kabbalah is an Avodah. If that's the case, then what? There would be 13 Kohanim who would be involved in the Tamid. Rather, it must be Elalav Shmamina Zorik Mekabel Shana. So therefore, Abba said it must be that it's the Kohen who does the Zrika who also does the Kabbalah. So you have one Kohen doing two parts, Zrika and Kabbalah. Therefore, it's only 12 Kohanim who need Kiddush Hayim v'Raglayim for the Tamid. Because if it was the Shochet, so it's very interesting. Even though we're drawing a lot for the Shechita of the Tamid, nevertheless, the Shechita, technically speaking, could be done by Azar, by Nakla, which means it doesn't require Kiddush Hayim v'Raglayim. If it was the Kohen who was doing the Shechita who was doing the Kabbalah is then an Avodah, and therefore Avodah requires Kiddush Hayim v'Raglayim. You would need 13 spouts. Rather, it must be that it was the Kohen who was doing the Kabbalah the Kohen who was doing the Zrika was one who was doing the Kabbalah. Indeed, that's case. And we'll say that is how the Rambam paskins that Halacha l'Maisa, the Kohen who did the Zrika was also the Kohen who was doing the Kabbalah. Beautiful. Amar li Rav Acha Berei Dirava Rav Ashi. Afana namitina. We also learn this way. Shachat hashochet, right? The shochet shechted. The kibel hamakabel, and then the makabel received the blood. Uba lo lizrok, and then he went to sprinkle it. So also this is even more explicit. Is Bryce clearly indicating to us that the one who did the Kabbalah was the one who did the Zrika Shmamin. I both say that indeed is the halacha. So both say. So remember again. So now we have a lot of incredible halacha over here. So you have the Kohen who did the Shechita. Only one pious. The pious, right? The lottery was for who would get to do the Shechita. Once that was determined, halacha l'maisa again, the 12 Kohanim to his right were Zoche, and the rest of the Avodos as outlined in the Mishnah. And the Kohen who did the Zrika was the Kohen who did the Kabbalah as well. Incredible. Says the Gemara ben Azai to Rabbi Akiva. Tanabanan. So also remember again. So the Mishnah outlined an order for the offering up of the sacrificial limbs of the Tamid. Ben Azai comes along and says, no, we have to offer them up in the way the animal walks. Says the Gemara, Tanabanan Keitza derech hilucho. How does the animal walk? Harosh v'haregel, the head and the front and the right hind leg. Hachazeh v'agera, the chest and the neck. Ushtei yadayim, the two front legs. Ushtei defanos, the two sides. Ha'ukatz v'haregel, and ultimately again the ukatz, the tail and the left hind leg. That's the order in which the animal walks. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer. So we'll see. We'll stop over here. We'll pick up a message with Rabbi Yossi tomorrow. Just the machlokes as to the order in which the Talmud was offered up on the mizbeach. Well, thank you.